I think Oklahoma fans are the most concerned about what this offense is going to look like, because if this offense, just the comment that I read just a moment ago, this offense has such potential. And if it can live up to its potential, and the defense is just as good as they were last year, even just close to what they were last season, what is the ceiling for this team? I really don't know where you cap Oklahoma if this offense is just good. I'm not talking about a great offense. I'm not talking about an offense that's putting up Baker Mayfield offense type numbers, having to score every single drive like he did against Texas Tech. That's not the kind of numbers that I'm talking about. I'm talking about an offense that can go out there and give you a solid performance week in, week out. Don't turn the ball over when the ball's turned over to you. Play complementary football. That's all we're looking for. That's all Oklahoma wanted the entirety of last season, right? So what could this entire team look like if that's what they got on offense? And I think a lot of Oklahoma fans are excited because of the potential and what's there. So it's a huge offensive reset. And we talk about the hire with the 29-year-old Ben Arbuckle, and I think his age is very important because you see the relationships that he's able to build with the players. And I think you even look at guys like Miguel Chavis and what the relationships that he's able to have with the players. He's a younger guy. I even think Todd Bates is young enough to where he has a really good relationship. Obviously, all these coaches have good relationships with them, but when you're younger and you're closer to their age, you're able to kind of relate to them a little bit more. Ben Arbuckle, he just clicks. He fits in with the guys so well. And he's been able to work in those relationships in a way that's harder to do the older that you get. And I think anybody that's got any kind of common sense about how relationships work, I've been a young guy that's been in a workforce that, blue collar workforce that has a bunch of guys that are older than me and probably old enough to be my dad. And I've gotten along well with them, but it's obviously easier to get along with people your own age, right? So, that's just huge. And I think that's important for Oklahoma in this offense. But anyways, they bring in this young 29-year-old offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, as an offensive coordinator. And he's got to try to overcome that terrible 2024 performance, where they had to fire Seth Luttrell after 8 games. You had your starting quarterback benched in the first SEC game that you play as a new conference school. First SEC game, right? It was that Tennessee game. Yeah, I know it was Tennessee, but I'm making sure that was the first SEC game. But anyways, you have your starting quarterback benched, and then probably benched for too long, and where it becomes a disaster, and you have to put him back in when he's already now at this point he's fighting. Man, do I save my eligibility? Do I save my extra year of eligibility, or do I go in? And I'm facing a really tough decision here, and I guess, hey, I've got to go in. I've got to prove myself, and so he goes in, and and then you've got a weird up down to the back end of your schedule too, where you beat Alabama, you lose to Missouri, you lose to LSU. I mean, what's going on here with this team? And it's such an up and down year, specifically on offense. All the turnovers, and Ben Arbuckle has to come in here and change everything. Now he does contrast very sharply with Seth Luttrell, and he does aim to restore prominence to this offense. He doesn't just want a good offense; he wants that top ranked offense. Obviously, trying to balance that with the defense is most important. But, he brings so much. He does have a really unique journey, too, when you take a look at his life. So go back just 7 years ago. This guy who, I don't know his contract, and I'm sure you can probably find rough numbers of what his contract is online. But I know for a fact he's making well over 6 figures, right? Just 7 years ago, this guy was working as an Uber Eats driver to try to make ends meet for his family, as he was trying to get into the profession that he's now in. And he's now in at really the highest level you can possibly get in, at least at the offensive coordinator position. It doesn't get much higher than Oklahoma, and it's one of the blue bloods. That's what I mean by that. And obviously, you can probably go to a team that's probably more successful right now. I get that. But to go from Western Kentucky, we're really kind of an intern almost at a small FCS team, working your way sorry, not FCS even. But then working your way to, I think, Western Kentucky after that, and then taking over as offensive coordinator at Washington State, huge upside there. And then taking over and going over and becoming an offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. That's a huge jump. I don't care who you are. That's a huge jump. And so for Ben Arbuckle, just 7 years ago, uh, driving Uber Eats to make ends meet, he now gets to call plays for the Oklahoma Sooners, a blue blood program, at the highest level too in the SEC. He brings a lot of fun, a lot of energy. Players really kind of talk about this a lot. I think Robert Spears Jennings, I think, was talking quite a bit about this. R. Mason Thomas might have talked a little bit about it as well at SEC Media Days, kind of talking about his swag and how he's competitive. He trash talks them, and trash talks the defense. Where I think it was Robert Spears Jennings who was talking about how when they make a big play on defense, they go over and make sure to trash talk back to Coach Arbuckle. And when they make a big one on offense, he runs over and trash talks to them. Makes it a very fun, very competitive environment, an enjoyable atmosphere. That's something you've got to love. That's something that you didn't see last season. Last season, you heard some good reports out of spring and summer, going into fall and the beginning of fall, but you didn't hear the fun that they're having there, and that's extremely important. Now, do you want just fun? No, you want a balance. You want obviously like a very good balance where you're not having too much fun, where you're not paying close enough attention to what's going on in the game, and with your game. But you do need some sort of balance there. But you have to have fun. You have to bring fun and build relationships, and that's one thing that I think Arbuckle has focused so well on since coming to Oklahoma. Focusing on individual connections with players, building trust between players, between players and between him and players, getting to know the players. And I think John Mateer spoke to this a lot in the media days, where he felt like it was easier for him. And I would assume Ben Arbuckle feels the same, that they can help each other learn, help each other teach this offense to this entire crew, because then it takes a little bit off of each of them to be able to build relationships. And that's one thing that Ben Arbuckle has been huge on, John Mateer has been huge on, and both of them coming in together is unprecedented. Because usually when you get a first year starter, I'm talking first year at that school, this is going to be his first year at Oklahoma. When you get that, if he were, let's say that Oklahoma would have gotten, let's say Mendoza from Cal. Mendoza would have come over and he was the starting quarterback this season, is what we're expecting. And he came over. He would have had to learn that entire system that Ben Arbuckle brings, and he would have had to try to get to know the players. Where John Mateer comes over to a system he already knows, he gets to teach that to the players, and him teaching it to the players is also building relationships there. I mean, it just makes everything so much smoother, such a smooth transition to a new conference for them, to a new team for them, to a new atmosphere, everything around them. Obviously, also Coach K coming over with them as well, the quarterback's coach coming with them as well, which is huge because, again, another guy to help instill this offense. And of course, Kevin Wilson being added to the staff helps because he's able to learn on his own and then try to be that extra guy to go out there and teach that offense as an analytical guy. So, it's a different vibe around this program, and a lot of that because of Ben Arbuckle. Again, I think John Mateer is also a part of that, but Ben Arbuckle obviously being that big thing, and with Ben Arbuckle, he's tried to build that relationship with every player, not just Mateer. I've seen several times where they're posting on social media where he's gone out to dinner with them. Him and Deion Burks, when Deion Burks mentioned that he was sticking around, he went out and made sure to have dinner with Deion Burks. Celebrate that. There was so much, and he was a big part of keeping Deion around. So, there's a lot that goes into this, and with Ben Arbuckle coming over, and you think of his kind of innovative scheme that he brings into Norman with the scheme that he runs. It's an offense that kind of evolves around a lot of new style plays, kind of the new progressions that the SEC is not really familiar with. There's a lot of things that he runs in his playbook that are just much different than what the SEC is used to seeing. And so I'm very interested, and I think the personnel around seems to fit really well. You go back and look at the tight ends. The tight ends didn't do too much. Excuse me as I take a quick swig. Throat kind of drying out. It's a little dry down here in this basement. Anyways, Getting into this scheme and what he's building around, I think that there's so much with John Mateer, or sorry, with Ben Arbuckle that he brings to the SEC that is extremely valuable. So I look at this. I think he's preparing for a lot of challenges in the SEC, and even Mateer challenges are going to come up, and it's going to be much more challenging than what both of them are used to. But there's also that same aspect of the SEC having to adapt to their game. So, upcoming the test, obviously the season starts with Illinois State, but the first major challenge going against the prime time, nighttime game, home game against Michigan, September 6th. This duo they have to prove themselves in that game to make Oklahoma fans feel good about them, feel good about this upcoming season. That's really big. And then, of course, after that, you jump into the Texas game. And I think that's the biggest game, because if you can win against Michigan, that says something about this team. But if you win Michigan and then turn around and go down and win in Dallas too, I think that's huge.